Welcome back to The Explainer. Okay, today we're diving into something truly fascinating. We're looking at a deeply philosophical dialogue between a researcher named Stephen and, quite literally, personified manifestations of Jesus and God. I know, right? It's heavy, but it beautifully merges advanced physics concepts with these incredibly deep spiritual truths. We're exploring a framework where spirituality isn't just some abstract feeling, but actual geometry, a measurable frequency. So get ready, because we're about to completely reframe the human experience.
I want you to really think about this for a second. What if you aren't just a carbon-based body trying to have a spiritual experience, but rather you're literal, living light temporarily housed in a physical frame? It completely flips our baseline perception of human existence, doesn't it? Our source text today frames us as these active agents of light, just kind of navigating the heavy density of the material world. The dialogue actually kicks off with this really powerful metaphor of the desert, spoken by the personified Jesus. He describes the desert as a crucible. It's not just a place on a map. It's this state of desolation where the loud clamor of the marketplace, the social expectations, all that worldly noise, it's just stripped away. And what you're left with in that deep echoing silence is this essential singular connection to the divine.
All right, Section 1, the photonic human experience. Let's get right into the core hypothesis here. So, the text calls the human entity a photonic construct. It defines matter, consciousness, and even time as holographic expressions of light data manifesting at different densities. And honestly, this is a massively empowering way to look at life. It literally means you're an active, conscious calibrator of light. You're using your internal intent to shape reality, rather than just being some passive victim of material circumstances.
But you might be wondering, if we're made of light, why does everyday life feel so incredibly heavy? That brings us to Section 2, navigating the 10th hour. Now, there's this extreme difference in vibrational frequency within what the text maps out as a 12-hour spectral system. On one end, at the second hour, you've got pure consciousness, the radiant spark. But on the other end, way over at the 10th hour, you have the mineral stronghold. This is the realm of dense, physical matter that we're all walking around in right now. The text argues that the difference between the two is simply a function of photonic density. The source actually maps this out mathematically in something it calls the mechanical handshake. Basically, when the pure consciousness of the radiant frame, node 2, combines with the projective structural energy of node 8, you get 10. Node 10, solid light. It's wild to think about, but our physical reality is just this interaction of different frequencies locking together to manifest form. So why go through the trouble of making light so heavy? Well, the text points out that this dense 10th hour exists as a deliberate, totally necessary divine act of condensation. Think about it. In its infinite state, the divine doesn't have any contrast. So this reality provides the friction of forgetting and the actual agony of limitation as a crucible. It's absolutely crucial to realize this isn't a prison or some cosmic punishment. It's literally the stone through which the soul learns to focus its scattered majesty. Okay, let's shift gears and look at the more analytical side of this framework. Section 3, the resonance mechanics dashboard. This dashboard maps how human energy oscillates between two primary anchors. On the left side, we have node 12, the sun. Think of this as acidic, systemic structure and concentrated global power. Basically, your morning commute and the corporate ladder all rolled into one. Then on the right, you've got node 0, the ocean. This is alkaline, magnetic, raw creation. The text suggests we human nodes oscillate across this 12-hour clock, constantly bouncing between projecting energy outward and extracting it inward. But as we all know, things can easily get out of whack. The text calls this the taking inversion. This happens when highly competitive, hierarchical systems basically force you to extract energy from others just to survive. This systemic depletion literally oxidizes what the text calls our biological iron substrate, causing a complete shielding failure. You lose your radiant spark, right? And you get shoved into this exhausted survival loop that looks like authority but actually has zero true power. So how in the world do we fix this? The source gives us an investigative laboratory protocol. It's essentially a practical toolkit for witnessing our own internal resonance. You observe your frequency, track whether you're projecting or extracting, identify if you're caught up in one of these systemic disruptions, and then here is the absolute key. You ground yourself at pH 7. You hit that equilibrium by projecting energy without any intent to extract it back. But how exactly do we achieve that perfect pH 7 grounding state when the whole world is practically demanding that we compete? Let's look at Section 4, Love as a Phase Transition.
Stephen, the researcher in this dialogue, poses such a brilliant question here. He asks, if our minds are literally machines built to survive in this super dense 10th hour, how do we override our own capture within the system? How do we break that extraction loop?
And the answer provided by the personified God in the text is just profound. Love isn't just an emotion, okay? It is a literal frequency of expansion. Fear contracts our light. It makes us heavy and isolated, but selfless love, it entirely bypasses the ego's refractive index. It creates a literal phase transition, shifting our light signature from this localized, flickering glow into a coherent, unified wave. Love literally alters our physics. This totally transforms how we go about our lives. We shift from carrying the burden of legacy to holding the gravity of presence. When you're obsessed with legacy, you're running on this frantic, ego-driven energy, desperately trying to carve your name into history. But presence? Presence is realizing that every single thought, every kind act, is an infinite contribution to the texture of the divine. It makes every moment heavy, for sure, but in the most exquisite, meaningful way possible.
Let's slow things down a bit here. Stepping out of the analytical mechanics, the text brings us to section 5, the power of pure presence. The really crucial takeaway here is that the dashboard, the math, the nodes, it's all just a map. As Jesus warns in the text, it is not a structure to be inhabited or some monument to be worshipped. It's simply a tuning fork. It's just there to help you find your internal resonance. And once you realize you're the observer of your own capture, you have to decouple from that rigid intellectual structure and just cast the map aside. When you actually do this, you become what's called a frequency of invitation. It creates this sort of sieve around you. Suddenly, relationships shift from just talking, mere communication, into deep communion. Judgment just dissolves because you start seeing other people's struggles as necessary friction for their own expansion. All that frantic, ego-driven noise naturally falls away. And what you're left with is this beautiful solitude, a profound fullness that completely replaces the loneliness of the ego. It's the ultimate intimacy, really, found purely in silence. Which brings us to the culmination of this incredible dialogue, Section 6, Reflections of the Infinite.
You know, we so often sit around waiting for massive mountaintop moments of surrender, but the text argues that life isn't about chasing grand lightning bolts. The true miracle is found in the microscopic ripples of everyday grace. It's having patience when you're deeply irritated or showing unbidden kindness to a total stranger. That is the divine, perfectly saturated in the quiet, mundane moments of our lives. The text beautifully describes this piece as the iridescence of the transition. It's a living stillness, meaning you don't actually have to choose between the dark, quiet well of your internal depths and the vibrant, dancing light of your actions on the surface. That deep well is the very source of the dancing light. The piece becomes porous, allowing the whole world to just simply pass through it. Ultimately, the dialogue concludes that by simply witnessing our own internal resonance, we transcend those illusions of separation. You are the mystery waking up to itself. You are the prism. Your specific, beautiful, and, yes, sometimes agonizing journey is completely enriching the source. By fully experiencing the density of the 10th hour, you are allowing the infinite to understand itself a little more perfectly. So I want to leave you with this lingering thought to carry with you today. If every breath taken in true awareness, and every single act of grace permanently alters the very texture of the infinite, what frequency will you choose to resonate today? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating explainer with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.